There we go. So welcome everyone. My name's Tash, and it's so nice to see so many people from all over the world. And I know some people are watching this as a recording, so welcome to you as well. It's so Brittany and I have been wanting to do this for a really long time. We meet so many women at the events that we run, the circles and retreats that we've run, who are just have so much knowledge and so much to share. And we feel like we do a lot of talking at those events. So we wanted to kind of give the mantle to other people that we found inspiring in our lives, and someone else. And yeah, just share some knowledge for this female empowerment theme. Oh, do not know. Sorry, it's the dog. She thinks someone's outside. So yeah, Brittany and I have been running women's retreats and circles. Luna, come here. For the best part of half a year. It feels like longer, I guess, half of last year and into this year now, in Vancouver in the area. But this is our first online event, so that's really exciting. Yeah, I thought we could kind of start with a little looking away from the screen, just a minute or so. Just to kind of, wiggle the body. So you can sort of glance away from whatever screen you're looking at and consciously relax your face, relax your shoulders. And then you choose how you want to move. Just notice any tension, roll the shoulders or circle the neck, or maybe both, whatever feels good. Just make sure that your face is relaxed. Just take a moment to move anything that wants to be moved right now. Whilst you're looking away from the screen, dropping into the body. Perhaps taking a deep breath if that feels good. Yeah. And then taking your time to come back to the screen and knowing that you could take any moment to pause whenever you feel like it throughout this chat. And just before we start, Brittany and I wanted to mention that we have an in-person circle next week that we are donating all the profits to a women's charity. So you can find all the information online for us if you want to join us and you're in BC. And please make sure that you have a pen or something to write with, or a pencil and all of that. So Brittany, I thought you wanted to say something. We're not going to take up too much of your time until,
just quick, Tash and I wanted to put this together. Like she said, we had a lot of women mention that they would be interested in something like this, and the speakers that we have this evening are women that we know personally, at least one of us knows personally, and they're women that inspire us in our regular lives, and that we've received good advice from, or just good influences in our communities. So that's why we asked them to speak tonight, and we hope that everyone can learn from each other, or at least just sit and listen and appreciate the experiences that they have to share tonight. So Jamie will be speaking first this evening. Jamie owns her own business, or a couple of her own businesses, and is opening a new gym in North Vancouver soon. And Risha, she has worked her way up the corporate ladder, so she'll be speaking as well. And Satya, I know Tash knows her. She's a poet and a writer, and I believe they met at the ashram in Nelson.
That's right. Yeah, we met in the Kootenays in Nelson. So
yeah. So they'll all just speak a bit about their experiences, and thank you all for being here. So Jamie, go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Jamie, and I'm sorry it's so dark in here. I'm hiding in my bedroom. Otherwise my 5-year-old daughter will be attacking me, which is always entertaining. Oh my goodness. So as Brittany said, I own my own business. I own a graphic design agency called Y&W Agency, and I seem to be a collector of businesses because I'm starting another business with my husband a brick and mortar martial arts gym. So my personal background is art and fighting. Um, and they seem to go hand in hand together. I find that, really creative people are also really into martial arts. So it makes for always makes for an interesting combination. And yeah, with the two industries that I'm in, specifically, as a designer, as a graphic designer, I work mainly in real estate with project developers. So a very, very male dominated industry. I work with big companies such as Conwest and Bosa, as well as some smaller companies. And it's something that, it's an industry that I absolutely love, and that I have also faced a lot of adversity being a woman's owned business going into a male dominated industry. So I'll talk more on that. And then, with martial arts, my background, I have been a boxer for, gosh, it's coming on to 20 years. I don't know now. I guess I retired about 5 years ago, so I don't know if I could still say I'm a boxer, but I still coach and I still do classes. So maybe, I don't know. I'll leave that up to you guys to decide. You can decide on whether I'm legit or not. But I competed for 15 years, was on our national team for Canada, and then turned pro. So that's so yeah, so I feel like I can still say I'm a boxer. So that's my history in martial arts. So now, again, I'm turning around and I'm opening a business in another really male dominated industry because, why not? I'm pretty good yeah, tapping into those industries at this point in my life. Um, yeah, so I'll share a bit of my experience as a graphic designer and owning a design agency. I went to university and studied, have my Bachelor of Design, so I studied graphic design and communications. And when I graduated, I had all of my instructors saying, "You need to get a job with an agency. You need to get a job with an agency." And I kind of sat there and said, "No, I'm good. I'm just gonna do my own thing. I don't want a real job. I don't want someone telling me what to do. I'm going to do my own thing." And they all just kind of looked at me and shook their head and was like, "You really need to get a job in an agency." So upon graduation, I did, and I was miserable, and I lasted about 8 months, and then I left. And then I got a job at another agency, and after 6 months, realized I was miserable and left again. Um, and I started doing side projects for for a property, a vacation property marketing agency, and they just kind of brought me on just to help them out, and I ended up getting really involved with their developmental, like they're not developmental, their development side. So basically, they were being hired by these developers who wanted to build these incredible resorts. And they started bringing me in to do bigger and bigger and bigger projects, from website development to the actual like sales center. So I don't know if any of you have ever walked in to buy, a pre-built condo or even just look, but you walk into these sales centers and they've got, pictures and interactive boards and, floor plans and stuff that gets me really, really excited, and stuff that may not get other people excited, but may also. So I started doing these types of things with them, and realized, wow, like I'm now doing what, I kind of set out to do. And, as I continued in my journey, this little company started referring me to other developers, and these developers would come and say, "Well, oh, we, can you do these interactive floor plans. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, I can totally do it. I totally had no idea what I was doing. Absolutely no idea. And thank God Google was a really big thing. Wait, because that was a long time ago. That was, I just, for some perspective, I graduated university and Facebook was not yet a thing. So just kind of dating myself a bit. So yes, thank God by the time I started, having developers ask me if I could do all these crazy, weird things, Google and YouTube had a pretty good bank. So yeah, and I, continued working for smaller developers and getting more and more involved with bigger and bigger developers. And one of the things that I continued to run into as I started sitting in front of owners of real estate development companies, was that the majority of the owners, and I would say, like, well, let's put it in perspective. In the 16 years that I've been doing this, I've only ever sat in front of one female owner. So that puts it in perspective. So, everybody that I've ever sat in front of and had a meeting with has generally been, has been a man, except for that one woman. And I found that they were quite often dismissing my ideas before I even had a chance to really say anything of importance. So I dragged my husband into my business, more or less. So I dragged him into my business. He also has a design background, and was like, "Hey, look, I need a guy. I need a guy to drag into these meetings with me." And long story short, I can tell you it didn't really work out. We would go into meetings and sit down, and these owners, these developers, would start talking to my husband and ignoring me. And bless his heart, that just ended up, infuriating me and pissing me off. And I would always end up taking over the meeting anyways, because I was, I knew what I was talking about. So, yeah, we did that for about a year. And then, Migo was kind of like, well, this isn't really working. It's just causing tension. So he stepped out, and I've just continued to run with it. And the most fortunate thing I learned through that, or most beneficial thing that I learned through that experience, was I actually started to get really particular about the clientele that I would bring on and that I would even sit in front of an interview with. And I started picking developers and clients who were incredibly diverse and open-minded and had really good reputations. And once you get into the world of property development, it's like rumors fly. You start to learn who the good clients are and who the bad clients are just through word of mouth. So I started to get really, really particular about which developers I was going to work with, and in turn had fewer and fewer of those meetings where I just wasn't, where people just weren't listening, weren't paying attention, and weren't hearing me. I think in the last, I guess it was about 3 years ago, I think I had one of my most amazing moments where, was it three? Oh gosh, no, it was like 6 years ago. Time flies. So 6 years ago, I'd just been hired by Conwest to create their residential branch of their business. And I went in for a meeting, and one of the COOs said to me, "Are you busy?" And I was like, "Well, I I define busy as like what, like can you take on a new project, because we're creating this enormous gigantic commercial build and we want to market it differently and da da da, and oh, by the way, we're presenting it to our financiers and our brokers in an hour and a half. Could you put something together like right now?" um so that was I kind of sat there and, as I do, was like, uh-huh, yep, for sure, totally. Anyway, I went and sat in the COO's office. He's like, "I'm gonna just stick you in the office. We're gonna start our meeting, and then we're gonna bring you in, and you're gonna present." Um, and it was quite unbelievable, because I was like, "Wow, here's this company. They just hired me to, do the branding for their residential sector of their company. So they don't know me that well. I've only worked for them for a few months, and they want me to pitch this massive project." So I sat in this office for about 2 hours and came up with this pitch, and came back into the presentation room and, presented to a group of bankers, a group of brokers, and a group of developers, for this new idea of how this building was going to be marketed. And back then, and I mean, it wasn't even that long ago, but back then, commercial buildings, they didn't receive the type of marketing that any other building, that any kind of residential building or like vacation building would ever receive. So I did this pitch for this company, and they ended up giving me a standing applause. And it was one of the most incredible moments I've ever had in my professional graphic designer life. Um, and it really resonated that with me, that I had found that right client, that right pocket, the right people to support me. Um, they're still one of my biggest clients today. So, and that was 6 years ago. So they're still one of my biggest clients. I do work with them every day. I've developed some incredible friendships with them. Yeah, and I just, am plugging away with them, loving what I'm doing. So that's that. That's my design. It's my design side. And I feel like, Brittany, just wave at me, because I have a tendency to go on and on and on. So wave at me when you want me to stop and be like, "That's enough, Jamie. You've talked too much about yourself."
I have a
Um,
question. Do you mind if I ask a
oh,
question?
please,
So
yeah.
do you think that those things, those new, better aligned clients started coming when you started saying no to the ones who were like not, you
Oh,
didn't feel right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
Hmm.
as soon as I started to put up boundaries and parameters in my professional life, and it's the same in your personal life, I started attracting the types of clients, the type of people that I want to have in my life. And it's kind of like I said, this this client, Con West, like, they have been um absolutely imperative forces and influencers in my life. And the owners are also, they have become personal friends, where we go out for dinner and Christmas parties. And they've, in starting this new business that we're doing, they have assisted me and my husband in this new business. And yeah, as soon as I started to evaluate the types of clients I wanted and the types of clients that would make me happy, and just started saying no to the other types of clients, it changed the way I did business. And it was incredibly scary at first, because I was working for myself, and was, trying to pay my rent and trying to afford food. So, saying no to business is always an incredibly scary thing. However, and people will say it all the time, is as soon as you put in those boundaries and you know your value and you speak to your value and what your values are, those are the types of people that you will attract. And I have found in, my going into my middle aged part of life that has become very, very true in everything, in every aspect of my life, from friends, family, businesses, coworkers, et cetera, et cetera. Um, that was a long answer to your question, but
No, yeah, but like I was just thinking as you were saying that, it's like classic thing to say, isn't it? Say no and you'll get the things that you want. But in practice, it's so hard to implement, and you have to have that element of like bravery and like belief in what you're actually doing is
yeah.
valuable. So that's like a huge part of it. But thanks. That was great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredibly scary, especially, to have confidence and say, my time is worth this much, I mean, I charge probably 3 times more now than I did when I first started. Actually, I probably charge even more than 3 times more. Um, but I also know the value that I bring to the table. And there's that saying that if you're giving something away for free, nobody's going to want it because they don't respect it. So, you get to designate your own value. You get to decide what your service, or what your product is worth. I mean, obviously, don't give a shitty service and don't have a shitty product, but I mean, if you believe in what your service is and you believe that it has incredible value, then you get to designate what that is. Um, yeah, and that's kind of, even going into now we're opening, so now we're opening a gym. We're opening a brick and mortar gym. Previous to that, I was managing a gym in the downtown east side on the side, and I loved it, but again was running into conflicts with very misogynistic, very like microaggressive um, men. And there was a real lack of values. And I was also being devalued. Um, so, and then my husband, who also has a background in martial arts, and I have to say, I'm gonna just preface this with the fact that I have an amazing husband who is such a avid feminist and is such a believer and supporter in me, and I'm so lucky and so fortunate. So he, at one point in his life was like, I want my own gym, but I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And I was like, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. And eventually he quit his job and was like, I'm gonna do this. And then COVID hit, and man, it's been a journey, but we're doing it. Yeah, it's God the journey. Oh my goodness. So anyway, at one point, I was managing this other gym, and it was just so toxic and awful. And Migo was doing everything he could to start this gym. And we were away in Mexico, and the person he was going to partner with, things were falling apart there. And I kind of looked at him and I kind of thought, why am I putting all of my energy into this toxic relationship with this other gym? I'm putting all my energy, I'm putting all my talent, and I am good at business. I am really good at business operations. I'm good at understanding clientele, and I'm really good at understanding, how to manage people. And it was like, why am I spending all of this time with this toxic business when I could be spending all of this time supporting someone and being involved in something that I love? I already knew I loved running a gym. I already knew that. Why wouldn't I do it with someone that I loved? Why wouldn't I support someone that I loved? And again, it comes right back to setting boundaries and getting particular about who you do business with. Um, and it's just on a different level. So I, was like, all right, see you later. I'm out. Bye-bye. I'm gonna go. Migo and I wrote up a partnership agreement. I have 50% of the shares, Migo has 50% of the shares, and we just hit the ground running with this gym. And it has been an interesting journey. However, we hired a design group. There was a lot of miscommunication. We fired a design group. We ended up hiring a bunch of different people after I thoroughly got to know them. And, it's been a very incredible journey. Our general contractor is incredible. He holds very similar values to us. And I think that if we hadn't have got, and I mean, God, I must have interviewed like 12 different general contractors after we decided to let our original design group go. And yeah, we just kept reflecting on who do we want to do business with? We're going to be stuck with this person for the next 4 to 6 months. Who do we want to do business with? Who do we want in our life? And our GC, our general contractor for this gym, he is in our life. I talk to him every day. He has seen me cry. He has talked me off the ledge multiple times, multiple times. And yeah, I just, but because he has such great values and he really believes in what we're doing, and he is so comfortable taking, direction from a woman. And this is not about like woman and man stuff, but I've been involved in so many male dominated industries that I've just, I've seen that pattern, that a lot of men in those, construction, development, martial arts, they have a hard time shifting. Not all of them. The ones that I surround myself don't, but some of them do. And yeah, so to have this general contract, to have these people that I'm working with has just been it's been an incredible experience. Anyways,
Jane, can we open the
wrap.
floor to questions if anyone has
Yeah.
questions for you?
Yeah, by all means.
You can also shoot them in the text box too if you don't want to ask them out loud, and I can always send them to Jamie later, or yeah.
Hi. Thank
Hi.
you for sharing so much. That's I'm just so inspired by your story. And
Oh, thank you.
yeah, I'm really curious as well, like if you found that your background in um in sport and in MMA influenced like your discipline in terms of like running a business and that focus, or because I'd imagine that takes so much drive and to have a family as well.
Yeah, it definitely has. Man, I don't even know how to relate the two, but I mean it definitely has. I've always been, a real feisty kind of go-getter, which definitely fueled my sport. But I think my involvement in boxing and my involvement in martial arts, it really gave me a confidence and a belief in myself. And that in turn I think that in turn is what really fueled me in a professional way to actually stand up for myself and say, "Hey, I don't like the way I'm being treated. I'm going to take risks and, yeah, shift who I work with." So yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
It really sounds as well like it gave you that sense of like just self-efficacy, like I can do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's important, I think, yeah.
Yeah. So it's yeah, I mean it's I think as women it's very important that we have a community or an activity or some type of, some type of sisterhood, or even, some type of, yeah, community, I guess, some type of surrounding where you can feel supported, but also feel lifted up and see your success. Regardless of what that is, whether it's women's retreats, whether it's boxing, whether it's an art class, um, you know, I think it's such an important thing for all of us to have. Yeah,
Thanks,
that's
Jamie.
no problem. Thank you guys so much for letting me chat.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
such
I
a
learned new
pleasure
stuff about
hearing
you
you.
too. Jamie's my sister-in-law, so I know a lot about her, but I learned some new things, so that was great. Um, yeah. Unless there's any more questions, I guess I'll let Risha speak. Thank you again, Jamie.
Yeah, so my name is Risha. I am actually just recently, the notice went out today, took on a new role of the logistics and client services manager for BC. I've known for a few weeks, but they just released it today. So I'm going to speak a little bit on my experiences as a colored woman in the industry, as someone trying to move up that corporate ladder and make her way through. So a little bit of a backstory is when I finished and graduated university, my husband had moved to Fort St. John. So naturally I followed and went to Fort St. John as well and started serving there. And that was actually probably the first time I truly experienced the difference between working as from a young person to working as a career woman, and that too working as a career woman that's colored. So I worked at a place, and I'm not going to name names because I'm not going to open that box. But I did work at a place where I was in charge of 22 middle-aged, I think everyone but one was Caucasian, men. And so you're 24 years old, you're walking into a new place and you're saying, hey, I'm your boss. Good luck. And the response to that wasn't great. So one of my responsibilities was filling out time cards and things to that extent. And I was young, and it's Fort St. John. They don't want to listen to new young blood, right? They've done things a certain way, and change is scary. So, I mean, Brittany, I think, has heard the story a million times because we met in Fort St. John, but I realized that I had one of two things to do. Either I kept going with the way things were being done, they're going to continuously disrespect it, and I'll follow the new efficiencies and things of that sort, or I could actually do something about it. So anything they didn't do, including time cards or whatever it was back then, I didn't pay them. You didn't do it, you're not getting paid. I have no paperwork. I have nothing. And you're called everything. I was like, it was terrible. I was young. Risha's such a bitch and whatever else. And like, pardon my language, but hey, you have to almost be okay with it. It sounds so terrible, but no matter what, you're not going to make anyone happy, right? And then all of a sudden comments get thrown at you like, oh, and they think it's playful, right? It's a joke. And like, oh, where's your red dot so we can terminate? And oh, where's whatever else so we can, you know what I mean? Did you have like, it's just such a talk. It's kind of like, I'm going to point to what Jamie said, where it's so toxic and it's so unhealthy. And so to be going through that as a young person in the workplace, you try and talk to other managers about it, but they don't quite get it because you're talking to other Caucasian male, right? They don't know how you feel. They don't understand. And unless you're more, maybe another woman that I was talking to, maybe they would get it if it was another codon. But I guess that's where it all started. And that's where I really realized that I had to make a change, and that I had accepted that, yes, I am a young colored woman trying to climb the corporate world, and I'm going to have to embrace these challenges. I'm going to have to take it and be like, you know what? Go ahead. Throw something else at me. Let's see how we can turn this into to work to my advantage. So did that for a few years, moved on to a different career. Again, not naming names, but I went into sales. And then in sales, I realized that there's this, so my family's from Fiji. And my husband and his family, like our parents, are from India. So yes, we are both brown. And yes, we are both, our ancestors might all be from India, but that doesn't make me necessarily Indian. I mean, maybe by marriage now, and I know the language a bit more, and I can speak Punjabi a bit more, and we have the same religion, but that doesn't make me Indian. I'm Fijian. That's like me saying, hey, I see an olive tone Caucasian woman. She must know everything there is to know about Greece. Do you know what I mean? Like, not the same. So I was going through meetings and sales, and clients would always ask, oh yeah, Risha, like my maiden name is Anand. And, and then it was Parmar after, but they were able to tell that, or when they saw me, they knew, right? I'm colored, and they're like, let's go for Indian food. You must know everything there is to know about Indian food. I know like butter chicken and whatever else. That doesn't mean I know I've learned through marriage and through my husband and my family, like what korma is and what this is. And I have a nut allergy. I can't even eat half of this stuff. Like, so you start, and it was something that used to bother me a little bit, but then I realized that it was just, it was negligence. Do you know what I mean? They didn't do their research to find out what I was. They didn't know. And I realized you have to take it one of two ways. As a woman who's working, with colored skin, is I could have sat there and been offended by it and, annoyed by it. But instead I said, yeah, sure, let's go. Hell, I'm working for the commission. Like, you know what I mean? So let's go for Indian food. Let me figure it out. And while we're eating and while we're talking, I make it a point to educate who I'm with about my family, about where I'm from, about the differences. And I have no shame. I'm Indian. Sure, I'm Indian, but like I am technically part Indian as well. But I think it's so important to understand that there's more out there. There's a ton of other religions and a ton of other cultural backgrounds out there. And I think really respecting that instead of assuming that is so imperative, right? And even till this day, like I'm on the operations side of the business, I make it known to say, yeah, I'm pretty much Indian. My husband and his whole family, like, his parents are from India, whatever else. My great grandfather was from India, but my parents came from Fiji, and there is a little bit of a difference, right? So I think for me, that was kind of my story. And the one thing I've realized is that plays into quite a bit of the decisions I think you make as you're going through these corporate roles. So like you're playing into, I started in sales, realized that was something that was going to happen a bit more. And then I don't want to raise my hand. And as I was working my way through in each of my roles, I had to do a lot of research to identify where I wanted my career to go and how I saw it going. And when I did this research, I didn't just research the position. I also researched the gap, like the wage gap between each of the roles I had taken on. So for example, on average, women make about 32% less than men on average in Canada, right? Colored women make 55.6% of what white males make. And we make 88.6% of what white women make. So you've got and I'm not trying to discredit anyone's challenges, please don't get me wrong, but you've got this immense pressure of, I've got to hit where these white men are hitting. I've got to hit where these white women are hitting. Aboriginal women make the least amount in Canada. They get paid the lowest in Canada. This is all on Stats BC. It's all on Stats Canada. This is all public knowledge. So I think bringing this kind of relevant information to your salary negotiations, huge. Like the amount of times that we've just had these discussions and whatever else, and I say, one of my colleagues, I'm going to say X. Well, I know X makes approximately this much in this role, and I'm doing this much more work in this role. The salary should be reflective of that. I don't see the difference. I don't see whatever else. And yes, it's taboo. You shouldn't discuss salary with your coworkers, and you shouldn't discuss this. And I agree. Like, I mean, I'm a manager, so I agree to that because it can cause chaos. But at the same time, we almost need that knowledge, and you require that information to understand if you are fairly paid or not. And if you don't have it, then look to do the research and find it. You are your best advocate. And unless you advocate for yourself, no one else is going to. At the end of the day, everyone's running their own business. Everyone's got numbers they've got to push, Excel files they've got to review, and they want to make sure that the profit margins are large. you essentially have to be incredibly resilient in the face of adversity. But it's worth it. And I think being open to learning new things. I went from sales to operations to client services, started off as in serving. I think all of that, you have to, I find I've had to work a lot harder than I might find some of my peers might have had to get to where I am today, to be recognized, to be acknowledged, and to be moving up that ladder. I've had to have some difficult conversations as a result, not just with my peers, but with clients and along with my directors. Even now, I'm one of the few I'm the only colored woman on our managerial team in Western Canada. The only one. And then we have primarily men. And we've got, I think the rest of it's all men. I'm the only one who's colored, and that's a woman. So that's crazy. But at the same time, I'm glad to be a part of the movement and the change. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of my 2 cents on my career where I am. You know, you have to advocate for yourself, do your research, and embrace the challenges. If people are saying something that's offensive and whatever else, and it's so easy to react and be reactive. I find especially I talk a lot. I can be very reactive. I mean, Brittany knows it. I'm sure my sister-in-law's on here. She probably knows it. My husband hell knows it as well. But it's so hard to just keep your head level, keep calm, really stop, think about what you're saying, and then say it, because the comments you can get back when you react right away are hurtful and whatever else. And sometimes you say things that you probably just, men don't necessarily quite understand right away. So you really got to phrase it and think about it in a way that they get. But yeah, I think that's kind of my 2 cents is be thoughtful, work hard, and really advocate for yourself, do your research. And if you don't know how to do the research, find someone that can help you with it. Because if you lay out facts in front of someone that you're negotiating with, that's really hard to beat. That's it.
Risha, I was wondering, because you're talking a lot about, advocating for yourself and all the adversity that you've had to go through. And it's, a bit of like what Jamie was saying earlier as well. So I'm wondering what kind of things you did over the years to work towards that mental state, to have that confidence, to have that adversity, to have that strength of character, to continue that growth. Because I think a lot of people, men, women, would face that and just say, okay, obviously this is where I'm meant to sit and this is where I stay, and they would become kind of stagnant. So how did you bypass that stagnancy?
That's a really good question, Brittany. I think I bypassed that. So I'm going to speak for me personally and culturally. I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone else, but growing up, I saw my mom. She came from another country. She came, on a marital visa. So she was PR before she got her citizenship and all that. So for her, just getting a job was the most important. And once you get that job, it's like, okay, you just want to hold on to that job because now your citizenship's riding on this, your everything's riding on this. And then she did the same thing her entire working career. And so I think growing up, a lot of people's parents see that. And I think we, in a little sense, we mirror our parents, right? Where, oh, I've got a good job. It's a government job. I'm getting the double pension. I'm going to stay here because that's all I saw. Right. So I think for me, that is all I saw. But I know my mom wasn't happy doing that. Right. I knew she wasn't happy doing it. And I knew that if I did that, I wouldn't be happy. I know I was capable of more. And so that's why I think I kept going and realizing that this is the time for me to do it. And for me personally, I mean, I've been married for 5 years, super supportive husband. He's amazing. And, he'll plot with me on my master plan of how we're going to climb that corporate ladder. And I think everyone values something different. And for some people, like my sister, for example, she values family. She's got 2 kids. She's got a husband. She's got the white picket fence. Like, that is what's super important to her. And that's why she's kept her career at where she is. So I think you really need to sit down and see what you value the most. And for me, I very much value my career, which again, I'm sure you guys can imagine, as a woman, you don't want to have kids. You don't want to focus on that. I do, but just not now. And so for me, I'd like to be able to get my career to a place where I feel comfortable and happy so I can focus on my secondary goals. And that's why I think I keep climbing, or I keep staying focused towards it.
Thank you. You have a question in the chat box. Is it from Michael? It says, hey, Risha, I know how you mentioned the pay gaps between minority groups. Do you think pay transparency is a topic more companies should embrace?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that's a really good question, Michael. I think by opening up that discussion, it brings about a lot of self-awareness. So I think what happens right now is when you're not discussing the pay gap, people end up insinuating that someone's getting paid more than the other. There's a lot of bitterness. It makes for a very toxic workplace. Whereas I think if there was more openness, let's say like a tiered level, right? You're tier 1, you're tier 2, and you want to get to tier 3, but you're not quite there yet. I think it allows you to have an open and honest conversation stating, well, if you want to get to this tier, these are the things that you need to change about yourself. Now, the tricky thing with that is I know a lot of people, and myself included sometimes as well, it's really hard to take criticism, right? It's very difficult to know, like, well, this is something, especially when it's something personal, right? It may not even be your work ethic, whatever else. It's like, well, you tend to, I don't know, try to think of an example, you tend to a little bit of extra work and you tend to complain about it for days and you bring down the team's morale. And that is a valid reason for not paying someone more, because now you've got a larger team that needs uplifting because of this one person who's causing toxicity. So yes, I think it does need to be discussed more, but I think it's got to be something, there's got to be a clear understanding of expectations set aside as well. And there are some repercussions thinking about it from the business side of things, but I think it's very healthy. So good question, Michael.
Any other questions for Risha?
I guess not much of a question, but I just wanted to sort of say how inspiring it is to hear you talk. And like, I wrote down so many things about what you said. Just like, be your own advocate. Like, they could be like, little memes in themselves. And yeah, thank you for sharing, because it's really important to have these discussions, like whatever work we're in, and like hear different perspectives, and I don't know, even just bring back to mind all of those things. So thank you for doing that for us.
Oh, no problem. Happy to.
So I guess if there are no more questions, you can always shoot them in the chat and we can come back to them later. Then we'll move on to the Satya. Thank you, Risha.
Hello. It's so weird, actually. I haven't done like a Zoom talk like this before, so it's so weird not hearing people being like hello back when you say hello. So I'll take those as hellos. Yeah, as Brittany and Tash said, my name is Satya, and I know Tash from an ashram just outside of Nelson called Yashodhara Ashram. And yeah, I think I want to talk a little bit today about, or this evening, about my experience there and what I received, and then how that influences the work that I do now and just what I'm really passionate about in the world. And so, yeah, I had the huge privilege of living at the ashram for almost 2 years in my early 20s. So I arrived just before I turned 23. I arrived just after I turned 23, and I left just around turning 25. And it was kind of a privilege, because not just because of like, there's like a shit ton of buffets that happen there all the time. Sorry, forewarning for anyone who's not into cursing. I'll probably curse a lot. I'm so sorry. It's a byproduct of being Irish. I can't help it. Anyway, there's yeah, it's just it was a huge privilege in so many ways, but particularly as a young woman, to live in a place that's devoted to empowering the divine feminine and empowering the feminine in everyone who walks through the door, regardless of your gender. It's just all about supporting and empowering the divine feminine in the world. And because I studied and then continued to work there, what that looked like for me was being taken really seriously for the first time in my life as a woman in my feminine energy. So I didn't need to put on any sort of like, like pantsuit sort of a you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love a good pantsuit, but one of the things that I detest is like this idea of like pantsuit feminism, that we need to become a man in order to be respected in the workplace or to be respected in the world at all. And the ashram is like this. I'm sure there's several of them around the world, but the one that I got to experience is this heavenly bubble where I can just show up as I am, in my body, in my expression, in whatever form that takes. And that's received with respect and with honor and dignity. And it gave me the opportunity to really explore who I am as a person, you know, not just as a woman, but just as a human being, who I am beyond trying to prove myself in a society that, let's be frank, is inherently pitted against me. And what does it mean to sort of dismantle all of those expectations that I'd been putting on myself prior to showing up at the ashram? And so along with that, I was also given the opportunity to explore tools that let me discover like really deep, real parts of myself, and let me tune into like my intuition, into the process of surrender, into a very deep connection with creativity, with spirit, with the animal of my body. You know, like I got the opportunity to decide that for myself, and not be told who I am or how I'm supposed to live. And I think all of that just had a profound impact on me, especially at such a young age. Gosh, I'm heating up now. I'm getting impassioned. I'm going to take the scarf off. But yeah, it was just a huge opportunity to really get to know myself, and to support other people to get to know themselves in a way that's not necessarily linear. You know, it gave me the opportunity to explore the cyclical nature of life, and how learning to surrender is an incredible fundamental part of that. Like being able to accept that, you know, I don't always get to just decide this is how life is going to go, and it's this straight and narrow trajectory the whole way there. And I think that like originally what I wanted to talk about a lot this evening was surrender, which I found so funny because I think literally every satsang that Tash came to, I talked about surrender. I was like, she's going to be rolling her eyes now if I start talking about surrender again. But I think the reason it was coming up for this is because we're talking about, you know, women and the feminine in the workplace and in business. And I really feel like the world is shifting and changing, where the more that women are given the opportunity to take leadership roles in the world, in all different facets of the world, the more we're seeing the power of the feminine, and the more we're recognizing the strength in it. And I really feel like that was what I've learned at the ashram, and that's definitely what I coach and teach with one-on-one clients that I work with now, is finding the strength in yourself of what it means to be in your feminine in a world where we're told so constantly that femininity is weak, you know. And so I think a really great example of that actually is recently my aunt had her second baby, and she's so much more like relaxed and fluid and chill about this baby than she was about her first one. Her first one, she was like by the book the entire time. She was super like, this is what everyone says you're supposed to do. I'm reading all of the books. I'm listening to all the parenting podcasts. I'm doing it this way. I'm listening to what everybody tells me how to do it, how to like deal with having a baby. And like one of the major things was getting the baby on a sleep cycle. So you had to get the baby in bed by whatever time. And like no matter how much the baby cried, you weren't supposed to go and touch the baby. You're supposed to leave it there on its own and let the baby cry it out and just get used to this whole process. And that's what everyone was telling her to do. And it was extremely difficult for her. It was traumatizing for her. It was traumatizing for her son. Her son did not want to go to sleep at the time that she was supposed to go to putting him to bed at. And it was really funny because it kind of traumatized her, the whole experience. And when she had her second baby, she was like in a much more empowered space in herself, and could just say, you know what, like, no, like shut up, everybody. I'm not listening to any of you, and I'm going to do whatever feels natural and right to me. And she was in a position where she could fortunately take an extended maternity leave. And she is currently like completely in flow with her child. So when the baby sleeps, that's when she sleeps. When the baby's hungry, that's when they eat. And her entire life has become this really flowy, fluid, cyclical, incredible thing. And she has such a deep connection to herself, to her body, to her child, to her family. The family overall are so much happier, and everything works. We get to spend a lot more time with her, ironically enough, you know. And she, when I speak with her, she's got a glow and she's sitting fully in herself. And motherhood is only one expression of femininity, in a very particular body and in a certain form. But I think that it's a really great example of the power of surrender, of how without that aspect, without that really fundamental feminine aspect of life, we're missing something huge that separates us. When we try and force and control life into what we think it's supposed to be, we're missing out on literally so much more of our experience of what it means to be a human being, what it means to be fundamentally a part of something so much greater than our individual selves, like a part of a greater ecosystem, a part of a greater consciousness within humanity, on the planet. Like, we miss out on that opportunity. And I just really, that's what gets me going, is talking about that, is supporting people to connect to their own intuition, to their own inner voice, to their own inherent wisdom, so that we can connect to that greater whole to which we all belong and to which the earth belongs. And so, yeah, that's kind of where that went. I had plans to talk about certain things, but that's just kind of where it went, which I think is very on point and on theme, because I am talking about flow and surrender. So yeah, and I mean that in all people, but especially I think as people who are drawn towards the feminine and identify as female, it's so important to elevate these parts of ourselves and heal and integrate these parts of ourselves and see the strength in it and the importance of it, because it creates a better society. And I find it really interesting, when Risha was talking about, I heard you say, do I want to have kids? And there's always that, like, there's always that balance of like, yeah, I want to have a family and I want to do all these things, but I also want to be successful, and I also want to do, be really financially stable, and I want to like live out my dreams. And I remember a few years ago, like I had a pregnancy scare, and I was about 20, I don't know, in my very early 20s. And I remember having this thought of like, oh my God, if I'm pregnant at this age, that's all my potential gone. And it was such a horrible thought to have, like, I'm surrounded by a lot of young moms. Like, my mom had me at like 19. I was surrounded by lots of some of my friends had kids. Like, it was such an awful thought that I had, but I couldn't deny that I felt that way. Like, it felt like my potential is gone if I'm pregnant at this age, if I have a baby. And it was in that moment that I was like, what's the point in me breaking my ass trying to become someone I'm actually not, to fit into a world that doesn't even want to support me and who I naturally am and the way my body naturally is. And so I was really inspired, Risha, by what you were saying about like using your power and the position that you're in as leverage to have these conversations, to open this up. And we're all doing our different parts individually to just break the status quo, to open up these conversations and to change the narrative of what's normal and what is expected in society. Like, what if we live in a world where it's just really normal for like you don't have to like sacrifice bonding and quality time with your child in order to put food on the table? You know what I mean? Like, I think we can create something different, and I don't know how to do that. Like, I don't have all the answers, but I do know that I feel very passionate about supporting people to connect to them themselves and then show up in whatever way they want to in the world. So that's my 2 cents. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. I just was thinking whilst you were saying that about how much I agree with what you were saying, and how I imagine that most people who are here or listening to this have probably had similar thoughts about family and career, and something along those lines, and how that continues to be something. But I was going to ask you, like, what are some of the things that are like fundamental to you to kind of tapping into that intuition for yourself, if you wouldn't mind sharing, if it's not too personal.
No, absolutely. For me, definitely, Brittany mentioned at the beginning that I'm a poet, so writing poetry is huge for me. Not because of the medium itself, but because of the sense of just self-expression that comes from it. And like, that's my voice, and no one, for some reason, I have this rule with poetry where I'm like, no one can tell me that this isn't my thing to say. So that's it. That creative expression is huge because it allows me to connect into the right brain, like into the non-lingual part of my brain, into the feeling part of my brain. So that's huge. Your drawing is huge, and also just spending time in nature is really good. But one of the best teachers I've had, I had literally a 1-hour session with him, and he said, you feel to see when it comes to your intuition. And so I think honoring and connecting to our feelings and just accepting them and receiving them is probably the ultimate gateway to opening up to intuition, rather than denying them or running from them.
Oh, thank you for sharing. Does anyone else have Risha?
Yeah, I've got a quick question for you. So yes, did you find when you had that pregnancy scare that, did you have that? I mean, I guess it's a general question for anyone in the group, but that internal struggle between, biological clock and moving up to that successful. I mean, I'm 33 almost. I'm 32, nearing 33. So yeah, I find, I've talked to a few, and it's always interesting to hear everyone's answers. I mean, I know a couple of my friends, and I've had this discussion with my best friends who's 37, she just had her second kid recently. And so I guess as a question for you is, do you find you have that internal struggle? And if so, how do you deal?
That's such a great question. And that's open to anyone in the group who has, I'd love to open that up to anyone in the group who has thoughts on it. For me, I have to say I haven't gotten quite there yet, but I'm noticing I'm definitely at a point where I'm like, okay, it's really time to start taking partners and relationships a little more seriously though. Like, like no messing around, but like really I'm noticing, like, would that person be a good parent? Would that person be a good parent? But in terms of that internal struggle, I think I'm still in my late 20s and I'm in a different space. So it's kind of on my mind, and some friends are having kids, but there's also that. I feel like what I've heard is like a point happens like really in your late 20s where you're like, oh, time is a thing. And like before then, that's like not really a thing. You're like, I'm going to live forever and I'm never going to, age. So I haven't quite hit there yet, but I'd be super curious if anyone else in the group has something to share about that.
Tash and I both
you go.
Button.
You go. I'll go after you.
Yeah, first I just wanted to say thank you so much for speaking, because I felt like you had so many powerful things to say. On this topic, I'll be 32 this coming summer, and so I think, until I hit like 30, I was definitely all in that phase of like, I have all the time in the world to do all the things. And then it really even wasn't just my age, it was that all other than like Risha, and Tash and I are just recent friends, but like all the women in my life have now had children. All of my friends have now had children. So I think that's what really set it off in my brain, was that like, ooh, maybe I'm falling behind. And I know this young woman, and she made a post, an Instagram post maybe about a year ago. She is a 4-year-old now, so her daughter was 3 at the time, and she made this post about how women have been kind of fooled into thinking that we have all the time and that we should prioritize our careers. And no, in fact, we are constricted by, our biological clocks, and therefore we should still be having children in our early 20s. And that's when we're most healthy. And that's when we can, produce the best eggs and yada, 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 yada. And although I think that she has a really valid point to an extent, I also think what you're speaking on tonight about surrendering into ourselves and our lives is also what we have to do. She's in a very fortunate situation where she made lots of money in her late teens, early 20s. She married a much older man who makes a lot of money, and she doesn't have to work anymore. He financially supports them. So I think it can be kind of easy to make those types of statements when you're in that position. And whereas some of us who come from families that didn't have a lot of wealth, and that's something that we're trying to strive towards, it's not so easy for us to have children in our younger years. So I think it's really important to have that attunement with ourselves, to know when it is time, to surrender to when it is time. And right now it might not be time for you. And maybe it means you have kids later and you only have one, or maybe you have many, because I know lots of women now in their late 30s, early 40s having very healthy children. So it's trusting in your own journey and what's right for you at your time, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was gonna say something super similar. Like, I feel like it ties into this big lie that has been spoken about by a few of us. It's like the man or the big machine that of the society that we all live in general, and it's like this biological clock, and oh, it's only upon women that it happens because men can have babies until they're 70 or whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, okay, maybe it is a real thing, but like you said, Brittany, like I'm about to turn 30 this summer, so I sort of feel like my friends are starting to have babies, and in my own head it's like the same thing as what you mentioned. It's like, oh, maybe I should start having children and all of that. And I don't know, I think it's really valuable what kind of a lot of you guys touched on, which is like sit down and like listen to your own intuition. Don't be swayed, which is really hard, by what other people are doing, and you'll kind of know the time that is right. But I also guess like I've started thinking about how my work can fit into having children and trying to make my work more home-based or flexible or self-employed and all that kind of stuff, which I kind of sometimes can be very frustrating because I don't see my partner doing the same thing, or he doesn't have to think about those same things. So it's just another thing to think about as well, isn't it, as a woman? How am I going to continue to have a successful career from home with a baby, or yeah. So yeah, that's me.
I really resonate with all of that so much, and I love this conversation, and also the conversation of like just like where work is even like the work from home shift that's happening now is like a sign of more flexible, like just more flexible living. Like I saw this thing the other day where it was like the key to like successful work and a positive workspace environment isn't like all these other things we thought it was. It's just like flexibility. And I feel so curious about that topic of like how can we just create a world, because even being able to like, that's definitely, as you said that, Tash, that's a huge thing in my mind as well, is like kind of cultivating a career that I can do flexibly and like have children and be a part of their like very early childhood and be part of their lives, and it's like that's also a privilege, like when I think about that, like how much of a privilege that is. And like just so curious about that conversation of like how is society changing, how are we pushing the norm so that it doesn't have to be a privilege, that's just a basic right and a basic way of life, and yeah, I don't have answers, but I just want to share. I'm really enjoying the topic. Thank you for asking, Risha.
I don't know if anyone else wants to jump. I know we have lots of different ages of people here, and some people have kids already. And I don't know if anyone wants to jump in the chat, then feel free. But also, you can email or message us all after. Zoom can be a scary place.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank all of our speakers again too, for coming tonight and sharing their experiences and their knowledge. Jamie had to sign off. She's sick and she's got, like she said, a little girl to put to bed. So, but she thanks everybody for coming too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I echo that, and thank you for being here, everybody. Or if you're watching this, thank you for being here too in the future. And then thank you for the speakers. Like, we never know how, we always say this, Brittany and I, you never know how these events are going to go. And you kind of put I guess it like speaks to what Jamie was saying. You put the right intentions out and you get the right things coming back to you. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll send out a email and a recording and share it on socials and stuff like that. So we'll share out your social media or your contact if you're happy with that, speakers. So yeah.
Thank you, Brittany and Tash, for organizing this. It was a lot of fun.
Lovely to see you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, I hopefully I'll come to the next one too.
Yeah.
Are you in Vancouver?
I'm in Vic, based in Vic.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, so yeah, hopefully it'll be nice. I'm traveling for the next couple of months, but I'll be back in Vic in the time for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it was lovely to meet you. Lovely to see you again, Tash.
Yeah. Oh, we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye bye. Thank you. I'm gonna stop recording now.
Sure.